2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
We're going to take a look at the newspaper front pages. First of all, here's the Daily Telegraph, leading with the BBC to face tougher scrutiny over bias. And we will be speaking to the Culture Secretary in around 5 minutes' time, Lucy Fraser, about that very issue. The Daily Mirror leads with the England football captain, Harry Kane. He's urging young people to get help for mental health. The Express says Sarah Ferguson's in good spirits after her shock new cancer diagnosis. The Independent focuses on the NHS, which has left almost 500,000 children waiting for mental health treatment. A surge in modern slavery in the social care sector since visa rules eased is the headline on the front of The Guardian. And joining us to go through the newspapers this morning, we say hello, good morning to Don Neeson and Chris Akabusi. Very nice to see you. Morning. Lovely to see you. Chris, let's start with a terrible story about a surge in modern slavery. This is front page of The Guardian today.
Yeah, so I suspect that this has never really gone away in certain sectors like car wash sector, but this is actually in the adult social care sector. And what The Guardian are saying is that since the ministers released immigration rules to fill vacancies, so we know that through the pandemic a lot of things happened, a lot of people left the industry, that there's been a rise in modern slavery. There's a company called Unseen, which is a charity, and they've looked to the agencies that bring these people across from various countries, charging exorbitant fees, almost, 1,000% more than, like 11k for a 1.5k costs. And I was just thinking about this, what would help facilitate this? And I tried to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's coming across here, who's got the promise of a great job. You go into the land of gold and honey. You're leaving. You might be the breadwinner for a family back home. You get this opportunity. It doesn't quite turn out like you think it's going to be, but you're now here. You're stuffed in some sort of substandard accommodation, and you do need to send money home. So you send a little bit home. So you can see how easy it is to be trapped in a scenario not quite as it was sold to you. So The Guardian and the undercover agents have come up with this and seen that this is going on in the 21st century. But how does it turn into slavery? I understand middlemen, I understand people acting as agents, taking a disproportionate cut of someone's earnings in this. And I've heard and I know how domestic slavery works, where people are kept captured in someone's home. Yeah. But how on earth does this turn into the term modern slavery? Well, so if you put yourself in that shoe and you've just come across from a developing country and you've won the lottery ticket, you are the breadwinner. Once you're here, even though it doesn't add up to the advertising bill, it's very difficult to melt away, try and get another job. You don't know the systems, the processes, the procedures. You've got no other contacts. The person that's got you here has got you in a psychic prison. They're telling you that the coppers are after you. There's all sorts of ways of manipulating the mind so that person doesn't feel capable of leaving this golden ticket. Awful, awful. Dawn, I want to skip to a story we haven't covered yet this morning, but we will do later on in the programme. It's on the front of the newspaper. We'll be speaking to the Shadow Environment Secretary, Steve Reed, about this, but he's speaking specifically about our waters and toxic sewage. What's on the front of the paper?
No, this is our, as you say, Shadow Environment Secretary, Steve Reed, has given an interview to the newspaper. And alleluia for this. I don't think there'll be a single person in this country that doesn't agree with this, that water bosses responsible for illegally dumping raw sewage should be in the dock themselves. So they can now... Labour are going to introduce a regulation that means the individual bosses of the water companies, who paid themselves 25 million in bonuses last year, by the way, are going to be held responsible for what happens, how much sewage is dumped illegally. At the moment, it's the water companies themselves that can be fined, and that fine is £250 million now. But that, for a lot of these companies, that's not a lot of money. Obviously, they're paying out the bonuses. And, you know, last year we had the highest level of illegal sewage discharges in history. I mean, we've literally got... I mean, you are allowed to dump a little bit after heavy rain every day. You get a special licence to do that, which is shocking. I don't think that should be allowed. No. But they've been doing it... Water companies have been doing it illegally and basically getting away with it. And it's the worst it's ever been. So fair play to Steve for coming up with this and saying that. And it's actually something from Labour that everyone's going... totally 100% agree with.
And yet, I'd love to think I could believe that this would happen.
Well, there is that.
There's one thing talking about it pre-election, there's another thing doing it post-election.
Yeah.
You know, in Nigeria, they say in elections, power to the people, but only on election day.
Yeah.
Once I'm in, see ya, and then it might be a harder thing to get through.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's a white noise of election promises at the moment, and it's a year to go. Oh, great.
Wow. We're going to hear from the Culture Secretary very shortly about bias within the BBC. It makes the front page headline in the Daily Telegraph. It says the BBC faces tougher scrutiny over bias. Chris, what do you make of this one?
Well, yeah, so I think we're trying to push water uphill here. It's an impossible task. You know, we've all got a particular bias. You come into this world, you find your community, and you have a bias. Now, I know that the BBC is paid for by taxpayers, licence fees, should I say, sorry, licence fees. But to try to stop a particular bias, I think it's very, very difficult. Labour's left-leaning. Oh, sorry, Labour's left-leaning, pardon me.
You don't say.
Although, no, it's right of centre. Labour's right of centre, exactly. Yeah. Labour was where the general populace is right of centre. So you might say that the BBC is left-leaning, is quite liberal, and that is a culture to get inducted in. So, yes, I like the idea you're trying to curb it a little bit in some way, shape or form, but I think you're pushing water uphill. And it's not. I don't think it's the actual output they're talking about from the terrestrial TV. They're talking about online stuff.
It's online and social media, and they're going to get Ofcom to regulate it from here on in, which is the new thing apart from this. But, I mean, it's like, you know, the BBC has loads of charters and you sign contracts, etc., etc. But then some people who work for the BBC, Gary Lineker, I think he's called, can just get away with doing and saying whatever they want, whereas other people lose their jobs over it. So... There's bias, lots of bias going on at the BBC at the moment.
Yeah, OK, so, I mean, I take your point with Gary Lineker, but I think it's much more about the corporation and the people that are providing news on behalf of the corporation. And my perspective is it's very difficult to come out of that cultural bubble, and you need many, many voices. I mean, what sort of bias have we got here in GB News?
I love everybody.
We're not paid.
GB News is totally different from the BBC.
100%.
In its pay structure, and also
this programme is straight down the middle.
Yeah.
Governed by Ofcom rules, so there's no slant one way or the other on this programme. And something I'll be put into the Culture Secretary, Dawn, is bias is often perceived by the listener and the viewer as not conforming to their views. That doesn't make anything...
That's the key word, isn't it? Perceived. You're absolutely right, yeah.
That doesn't make it biased. It makes it in difference to what you think.
Exactly. There is it's what you perceive to be. Just because you might not agree with it doesn't mean that it's biased.
Yes.
But, you know, there are clear instances of bias.
Let's put that to the Minister. We